Why is everyone becoming a Christian? It didn't used to be like this.
For over a century, the narrative was set in stone. As humanity got smarter, we were told that God would simply vanish. We were told that science would replace the soul, and logic would kill the myth of a creator. By 2006, new atheism was the most powerful force in the world. But then, something nobody expected started to happen. The very people who were supposed to lead us away from faith started walking back. Titans of the intellectual world, from Oxford dons and genomic scientists to hard-nosed legal journalists, began to find themselves on their knees. Even today, famous skeptics like Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins are saying things that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. A massive shift is occurring. The smartest people in the world are realizing something. Without a spiritual anchor, the modern world is an empty machine. If you've been feeling lost, or if you've been told that faith is for people who don't think, then you need to see what these men and women found. Imagine being the man tasked with reading the instruction manual for human life. That was Dr. Francis Collins. As the head of the Human Genome Project, he wasn't looking for God. He was interested in chemicals, sequences, and formulas. To a young Collins, the idea of a creator was a crutch. He thought it was for people who couldn't handle the cold truth of biology. He saw himself as a man of facts. He viewed faith as a sentimental superstition, something people used to hide from the reality of life. But as he unspooled the 3 billion letters of the human DNA code, he realized something that haunted him. Codes don't write themselves. He found himself staring at a complexity that felt less like an accident and more like a signature.
What you see are two images that look somewhat similar to each other, but they stand in for somewhat different worldview perspectives. This being, of course, a beautiful stained glass window, the rose window in Westminster Cathedral. And this is an unusual view of DNA, not looking at it from the side, but looking down the long axis of DNA, so you see that radial pattern.
He eventually described DNA as the language of God. This discovery did more than add to his research. It healed his entire worldview. He realized that science didn't make God smaller. It made the miracle of life even bigger. He wasn't the only one in the lab feeling this tug. Dr. Rosalind Picard, an AI expert at MIT, felt it too.
Were that Christians, and actually all religions I was pretty antagonistic toward, were people who really didn't know their science or didn't, or maybe they needed a crutch or something. I really didn't think they were that smart.
But the more she studied the human mind, the more she realized that logic alone couldn't explain the soul. Science can explain the how of our bodies, but it can't always explain the why of our hearts. To find that answer, we have to look at a man who was a master of logic, and he was arguably the most reluctant convert in history. If logic was a weapon, C.S. Lewis was a master swordsman. As a professor at Oxford and a veteran of World War I, he had seen the worst of the world. He knew it could be cold and indifferent. He spent his youth convinced that religion was just a comfort for the weak. He described his life back then as a whirl of contradictions. He famously said that he was angry at God for not existing, and he was also angry at God for the state of the world. But Lewis had a problem he couldn't solve: the feeling of joy. Not a fleeting happiness, but a sharp, stabbing longing for something this world couldn't provide. He believed that if we feel hunger, food exists. If we feel thirst, water exists. So, if we feel a longing that nothing on earth can satisfy, then the thing that satisfies that longing must exist too. He tried to argue it away with books and cold reasoning. But through long nights of debate with his friend J.R.R. Tolkien, Lewis realized something terrifying. His atheism was a thin, icy world. it couldn't explain the beauty of the human heart. Tolkien argued that the great legends of heroes and sacrifice weren't just lies. They were echoes of a true myth, a story that has all the wonder of a legend, but actually happened in history. Lewis realized that the gospel was the original story. Every other great tale was trying to copy it. He didn't walk into faith with a smile or a sense of relief. He called himself the most reluctant convert in all of England. He didn't choose faith because it felt good. He chose it because his logic told him he could no longer deny it. Then, he finally knelt down and admitted that God was God. He found that faith didn't mean an intellectual shutdown. It didn't mean he had to stop asking the hard questions. It meant finally opening his eyes to the light. But Lewis was a philosopher. He was satisfied by the beauty and the logic of the story. For a skeptic who demands physical, forensic proof, a true myth still isn't enough. They need a crime scene. They need a paper trail. And that is exactly what Lee Strobel set out to find. Lee Strobel found that trail in the most unlikely place, his own newsroom. As the legal editor for the Chicago Tribune, his world was built on evidence. He lived by hard facts and witness statements. When his wife Leslie announced she had become a Christian, Lee felt like he was losing her to a cult. So, he did what any investigative reporter would do. He decided to save her by debunking the foundation of her faith, the resurrection. For 2 years, he treated the gospel like a cold case. He traveled across the country to interview experts in medicine, history, and archaeology. He searched for the trail of evidence. He looked for tiny historical details that would prove the story was a fraud. He wanted to prove that the body of Jesus was stolen, or that the witnesses were hallucinating. But the deeper he dug, the more the evidence pushed back. Strobel discovered something that shook his legal foundation. He realized that if you throw out the historical record for Jesus, you'd have to throw out the history of the entire ancient world. We have thousands more early copies of the Gospels than we do for the writings of Plato or Caesar. To a legal expert, the paper trail for Jesus went far beyond good. It was unprecedented. One day, sitting in his office, he realized his atheism required more faith than the gospel did. Ignoring the truth any longer felt like a betrayal of his own professional integrity.
Even the atheist New Testament scholar, Gerd Ludemann, says historically it's indisputable that Jesus was dead. So Jesus was dead.
His conversion did more than change his mind. It restored his marriage and gave him a completely new life. Yet, even in our modern world, some of the most famous intellectuals are still standing on the edge. Today, we see a new phenomenon. Men like Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins are part of what we might call the bridge. Richard Dawkins, the author of The God Delusion, recently surprised the world.
I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country.
He expresses concern for a world where that moral compass is lost. He defends the house of faith, even while he chooses to stand outside the front door. But while Dawkins stands at the door, those closest to him are actually walking through it. Josh Timonen, the man who spent years as Dawkins' right-hand man and built his digital empire, recently announced his own conversion to Christianity. He realized that the nothingness of atheism couldn't sustain a life of meaning. In 2020, he chose to follow the very faith he once helped to mock.
I did rededicate myself to following Jesus.
And then there's Jordan Peterson.
I act as if God exists.
He acts as if God exists because he sees no other way for a society to survive. These men serve as gatekeepers for a generation that was told God was a relic, only to realize he might be the only thing keeping our world from falling apart. They walked to the very edge of the bridge and looked across. But if these brilliant minds are just standing on the bridge, where does that leave you?